Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rubicon Advisors webinar here on YouTube this morning. I've got Ian Weatherall with me with Principal Funds. Ian, he's going to be talking about something I think is extremely timely today. We're going to be talking about Social Security, maybe a little bit of Medicare, all the fun stuff that we like to just talk about on a Friday morning. So, I really appreciate you getting on, watching this video. We actually had a video in the can ready to go last month, but unfortunately compliance is not allowing us to show it because the interviewee that I had chosen, their company does not like to post videos on YouTube. So hopefully at some point we can share that, but we do have a secret video out there. So hopefully someday we can show it. But in the meantime, we got Ian here, and Ian's my guy. So every mutual fund company out there, what they do is they've got their little niches. Some companies, they talk about 529 plans, some talk about retirement plans. Principal Funds, their niche is Social Security and Medicare. So Ian, when I say Ian's my guy, when my clients call me and say, Brian, I have a question of whether or not I should take a distribution, how should I do my Social Security, how should I structure it? Ian is our guy. I will call Ian up, and so I'm not on hold with the Social Security Department for 3 hours. I get to be on hold with Ian, and Ian will usually walk me through some things. And Ian, a tester, you've actually gotten on the phone with a couple of my clients to be able to say, hey, this is how we recommend it, and you'll actually lay it out with clients. So Ian's going to be a valuable resource, not only in today's call, but beyond that, as we are going to be looking at maybe in the future, if somebody has a question or getting ready to take Social Security. Ian, your phone's going to be ringing, buddy, because we're going to probably going to need some help. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to Ian. Ian's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then we're just going to, Ian, like usually my webinars, what I do, we're just going to have a conversation. I know we've got some notes, we've got a PowerPoint we're gonna look through, but at the end of the day, we're just having a conversation. So let's talk about it. So go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on, Brian. I appreciate it, and look forward to meeting all of your clients over time. Yeah, as Brian mentioned, my name is Ian Weatherall, Principal Asset Management, and having joined Principal in January 2020, I'm very familiar with Zoom. So I like this medium to display a lot of information, and it's an important topic. To Brian's point, the government has really created a blind spot for all of you as you embark towards retirement with one of your larger income streams in retirement, which we'll talk about mostly today, Social Security, representing 30 to 40% of your retirement income portfolio, administered by the government, as well as Medicare, as Brian touched on. It's one of your larger expenses apart from your primary residence that you have as you explore retirement. And, I think, Brian's challenge is to take you as you shift from working to not working and cobble together income so you can live a comfortable and confident retirement. And these are two critical factors. So we'll spend time, talking about Social Security and ways you can maximize the income that presents for the rest of your life today. But, Brian, I appreciate your partnership, and I look forward to being a resource on either topic going forward.
Great. Well, Ian, Social Security is a big deal. I think that's why I think this is just such a timely conversation, is the debate, and you and I debated in prep, is Social Security even going to be there for us? And I think that's where, you and I are going to go over that in a little bit, but feel free to throw up the PowerPoint. Let's start having this discussion as far as Social Security, and we're gonna dive a little deep into some stuff. I'm gonna ask you questions, and we're gonna share our own personal thoughts and ideas, and go from there.
Sure. Yeah. Here, I'll share one slide just to kick off the dialogue. I think it's instructive. And Brian, let me know if you can see the screen. Okay.
I can. We're looking great.
Yeah. I think it's instructive to think about where we've been in Social Security and why it exists in the first place, and then we could talk about some of the potential changes coming down the line. But Social Security was started in the mid 1930s, because we were coming out of the Great Depression, and had 24% peak unemployment in Great Depression times, you had over 50% unemployment in those considered senior, age 60 at the time. And so you had a whole generation of people who were going to live a very undignified retirement. So Social Security was created in 1935, administered beginning in 1937 to make sure these people didn't just retire on the streets. And it was never meant to be the sole source of retirement income. And I can't tell you, in doing a lot of these interactions, a lot of people think, well, I've got $50,000 saved and I have my Social Security, so I should be good for retirement. And Social Security is very helpful, but it is not the end all be all as it relates to retirement income. So you can see over time, full retirement age was 65 in 1935. They didn't change that until almost 80 years later, 70 years later. Sorry. So 2009, they moved it from 65 to 66. And one thing that's important that happened since then is an increase in life expectancy, right? The life expectancy in 1940 for a 65-year-old was 65. And that it was why they created that date. But now, a 65-year-old couple, the woman is expected to live to 90 and the man to 86. So you've had a huge jump in longevity, and not a lot of changes are made to Social Security. Nothing was changed along the way. You can see by 2 years ago now, they finally moved the FRA to 67, but you've gone now 80 years almost, where they've rarely changed the goalpost, but people are living a lot longer. So that's one of the stresses that has hit Social Security over time is, people live longer, collecting the same amount of money, and it's put more burden onto the system.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, we remember whether you agree with Social Security or you don't, I think at this point that ship has sailed, but I think you got to remember what the cultural dynamics happened, right? When Social Security was created, it wasn't looking forward to World War II and the baby boom, even though it was in 1935 and sabers were rattling. And I was a history major in college, so this is kind of right up my alley that I'm actually using my degree now. And so it's one of those things where Social Security was a byproduct of the New Deal. It was a byproduct of the Great Depression, which was a byproduct of the economic 1920s, coming off of World War I. So we can see these cyclical moves, and it was a byproduct of that. But we didn't think we were going to have the birth rates that we did coming out of World War II, and therefore creating a strain on these things. And not that we should understand birth rates or anything like that and make that indicate our economic policy, but I think it's just fascinating that Social Security had, I believe, the right idea of what it was trying to accomplish. I just think a lot of economic, cultural things occurred that created a challenge, and I think at that point they didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know what to do,
and they didn't do anything at all. That was the problem, is you had a span of 70 years where things were changing. Not only did you have a baby boom, but and an echo boom now with the millennials, but you also had a mass increase in longevity, and they did nothing until recently, the last 10 or 15 years, to really address that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what else you got?
Well, I'll share with you, one thing that follows up with that before we talk about the mechanics of Social Security is, you'll find that 1 in 3 Americans takes their Social Security before their full retirement age. And about half of them say it's because, and Brian, stop me if you've heard this before, well, they're going to run out of money, so I may as well take it now so I get something. So in case there's a chance I get nothing later. And it's a fair criticism. So I think we should tackle that now, just to put that to bed in a sense. But
and one thing we're going to do, Ian, sorry to interrupt you, as I will probably do quite often in this thing, is I'm going to show one of my PowerPoints on top of this, that we can actually do somewhat of an estimate, and figure out when is the right time to pull money out of your Social Security. Do you do it so you can make sure you get all of it, or how does that equate? Because I think you're going to show us some numbers that it's really important to plan on when you can do that, or Uncle Sam's going to take a lot of money.
Right. Both with, spousal benefits, which we'll talk about, and taxes as well. You want to make a smart decision on it. And, what I find in most examples is it doesn't make a lot of sense to take it right when you first can at age 62. So you can't take, unless you're a surviving spouse, you cannot take Social Security before 62. And a little less than 50% of America takes it between 62 and 67, which is most people's FRA, full retirement age. So, the reason is that you can see on the screen that, the Social Security has said that they are money good on their commitments until at least 2034. Then from that point on forward, given the current economic circumstances, they expect no less than 77% of what they've committed to on a go-forward basis. But there are some changes afoot, and some of them are out there to beef up Social Security. I wouldn't say solve the problem by any means, but keep it afloat. And the increase in FICA taxes is one. The withholding this year on payrolls for earnings goes up to almost just shy of $150,000, and so that number a few years ago was 118,000. So that threshold in which you pay taxes on, and you as an employer are paying 6.2% of your earnings up to that threshold, and that's matched by your employer. So it's an aggregate of 12.4%. That's a lot of money going into the kitty for Social Security. As that cap goes higher, and it likely will continue to do so, then that brings in a lot more money for Social Security. And the other one we touched on a little earlier was, FRA used to be 65. Now it's 67. I'm 45 years old. I wouldn't expect to have my FRA be 67. It might be 68, 69, 70. And as much as I may not like that, I have 20, 25 years before I'm going to retire that I can plan for my financial plan to deal with it. I mean, I like that, but they've never made changes to Social Security to people who are soon to consume it, right? So if you're 62 and listening to this, I wouldn't worry about that so much. And so I think they'll increase the full retirement age. It's likely for younger participants to take a little stress off the back end. And as that cap goes up to say 200,000 over time, it'll capture a lot more income to fund Social Security on the front end. Those will keep it solvent for a while. Maybe not for my children who are 8 and 5, but for a good long while.
Well, yeah, and I think, for example, in my family, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of doing both. I'm getting my portion of this ready so I can show some different estimates. But my dad just took Social Security, and it was a big battle. I mean, he ended up not taking it until he was 63, even though he could have taken it at 62, because we didn't know if he should wait, because we kept running numbers and should he do it, because he even though he quote unquote retired, he was still working part-time. And so then it was like, okay, if I do this, it comes down to even wages, right? I don't know if you can show that slide. I think this is really important, talking about wages. So
yeah, hold on. Let me find it real quick. Yep, there we go. Bear with me a second. There we go. So if you take it early, and to your point, and you're working and earning a wage over 21,000. So at 62, 63, 64, up until the year you hit your full retirement age, for every $2 you earn over the threshold you see, call it $21,000 on the screen, they're going to withhold $1 from benefits. It doesn't evaporate, but they're going to withhold it, meaning you're not going to receive it until you hit your full retirement age. It'll be returned back on top of your Social Security from your full retirement age, somewhere between 66 or 67 and beyond for the rest of your life. But I tell people, I have a lot of people who are like, Ian, I'm in my early 60s. I want to enjoy my money while I'm young. I don't want to, necessarily have it when I'm 85 and can't do a lot with it, let's say. But this is not the, I live here in Northern California. A lot of people have a lake house or go out to the Delta with a boat. And this is not the fund to tap for that, because say you make $50,000 a year and you're 62, you say, well, I'll take my Social Security now so I can, buy my boat. They're going to withhold, if the difference between your income, 50,000 and say it's 20,000, so roughly 30,000 differential, they're going to withhold $15,000 out of your Social Security. So That could be some, if not all of it, right? You're not going to get it to fund the boat purchase, but you'll permanently reduce your benefit. And so I'll show you that right now. You can see here on this chart if you take it at 62, you permanently reduce your benefit by 25 to 30%, right? So it's a substantial decrease in what you could receive for the rest of your life, and you won't have necessarily accomplished that goal of creating the income you want,
Sorry
so
about that,
it's
guys. My daughter is home from college and she did not realize that I'm on a webinar call right now. So I apologize for that. But that's, I guess, what we get for not being able to edit our videos. And you're
I thought you had an arm cramp, or I thought your arm was cramping
no,
or
I was
something.
like,
So okay.
no way. So it's okay. So anyways, I digress, Ian. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, so I think if you take it early and you're working, you can really see the downward spiral you're setting yourself on, right? So not only are you taking it early and you're working, so you earn $50,000, which here in Northern California is not a inordinate amount of money. You're going to lock in a 25 to 30% reduction that you can see on the light blue bars on the far left side, and that's for the rest of your life. And you, because of that earnings penalty, you may not even get the money you're hoping for along the way.
Well, I think part of the problem is this. It isn't. This is where Ian and I battled a little bit in our prep talk, right? So, Ian, I think this is the challenge. Okay, get rid of the PowerPoint for a little bit. Let's have a little bit of a discussion here. I think this is the main crux for investing, Social Security, life in general. Okay, I'm going to philosophize for a second. And Ian, I don't know if you know this. Okay, this is I might actually blow your mind right now. Okay, this is true. Right. You do not know when you're going to die. Okay, I said it. You do not know. We do not know of that end date that we have all are going towards. Right? We do not know when our ticket will be punched, and therefore, that I believe is the challenge when we plan, whether it's your investments, whether we plan your strategy with Social Security, because if someone lives to 64, they should absolutely have taken it out at age 62. But we don't know, right? So we have to guesstimate. And I think that's the challenge. And Ian, I think you're right. I think you go, okay, if you can hold off a little bit longer. I mean, I've heard plenty of stories where the guy finally retires, he's out, and this is a true story, happened up in Oregon. Guy worked all his life, I think it was construction, did everything. First day of retirement, he decided to go down to the Rogue River and go fishing because it was his first day of retirement. He never went home that night. He had a heart attack on the banks of the river. Now, if I'm going to go, I would love to go on the banks of the river. I think, it's a little peaceful, but at the end of the day, he thought he had retirement. And I think it's just, and I don't want to be a doomsdayer. I mean, this call is not about to be, let's be a doomsdayer of sadness. What it is about, though, is to say, okay, because we don't know when we've got to kind of guesstimate. And sometimes we hit it right. And in my life, and I think you'll agree with this because you're from back east, right? And George Steinbrenner, I think, is the only one who ever got it right. I don't know if you remember the story, but George Steinbrenner, he was worth a little over $1 billion. He owned the New York Yankees. His estate plan was he died in the year that there was a moratorium and there were no estate taxes due whatsoever. So his kids got the entire inheritance with no estate tax. And so he's the only guy I've ever heard that's actually planned it well. But you look beyond that and you go, okay, how do I figure out, Brian, what we're going to do? How do I figure out, this sort of situation? So I'm going to show you my screen real quick because I think you'll appreciate this. This is a program that we use. It's a software. And I believe you can see it. This is a software we use for financial planning in the firm. And we can actually do an optimal Social Security. And what I actually did here is, I don't know if you guys knew, but Jimmy Buffett's my client. And let's see if we can get this going. And sometimes this software is a little glitchy. So it looks like we might be having to resort back to a different conversation for the time being until I can get this back. But which, yes, that's going to be the case. So we're going to come back here. We're going to go here. again,
Yeah,
the joys of
but
doing
I think that the point is well taken, right? We don't know how long we're going to live, short or long, right?
yeah,
And you know, the one thing I'll share with you, and I think your software can model this, is you
well,
know, for me, I don't have an annuity or a pension, right? And so Social Security is the only income I will have that will live every day in this earth that I do. So it's the only hedge I have against outliving my money, and that's what I know you're the right capital can show.
yeah. So this program. So I don't know if you knew Jimmy Buffett's my client. So Jimmy's 63. You know, it's not the Jimmy Buffett. This client's 63. Their spouse, which is named co-client, is also 63. And I can go in here, and what I did is I put in here that we're going to just estimate his Social Security at 2,500, and in 4 years he'll get full retirement age, and he can pull out his Social Security. Okay. His wife turned 67 a month later, and her Social Security is also 2,500. Okay. And so then what I can do is I can go in here into this retirement portion of it, and we can actually look at the income, and then we can start playing around with the Social Security and seeing. We're just happen to have slow internet today, so it's taking a little bit of time. But we're going to be able to actually look at when should we be able to take this Social Security. So give it a couple seconds here.
Okay.
You know, we do all this prepping, Ian. Like Ian, you and I spent a couple hours yesterday, and we spent about a half an hour this morning, and we do all this prep, and then by the way,
Internet doesn't.
this is like our third take on this stuff. We did 2 takes, and one, Ian and I, we were right in the middle of talking, and literally everything just cut out. So things happen and things go. But again, I just appreciate you listening to the web call, because I think, again, and we'll go more into this later, but what I want you guys to be able to take out of it is the fact that there's resources to go. So why we wait to do this, Ian, why don't we move on? And then of course it's going to come up right now when I did stop sharing my screen, and it did. So let's try this one more time. So what I can do is, in here I can go in and do my Social Security exam. So I think you can see in here that we can figure out what the optimal strategy is. So if we said, let's just take retirement out versus waiting until full retirement age. And this is assuming they live to age 90. Okay, this is both husband and wife. All right. This shows you the total comparison, but basically by taking that years earlier, because you're stuck at that lower dollar amount, you're going to get $460,000 less in Social Security. Okay, which is just, it's just a crazy number.
Yeah.
And so I think those are ways to look at this, because then we can go into action items, and we can change it. But yeah, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, the longer you live, the bigger that delta becomes, right? Of course, if you die earlier, it changes the math a little bit. But
yeah,
for many of us, we're not worried about dying earlier per se. We're worried about, well, what if we outlive our money, right?
Yeah.
And this is a way you can allay that concern by maximizing Social Security.
Yeah, and I think that's the deal. I think and if we want, we can look at this if you waited until full retirement age, right? Rather than, I mean, not full retirement age, but then, Ian, what are the other options? Okay, we're talking about this whole notion, don't take it early unless you need to, right? Everything is all about you as the client. So if you need to take it early, take it early. What we're just saying is, ideally, if we can help it, we don't want to. And so,
and certainly if you're working and making a decent living early, you have the double penalty of reducing your benefit, like I'll show now on the screen here. Maybe I'll go to this one. You can see on this chart, you reduce the benefit by anywhere from 25 to 30%.
Well, and that's what we saw, right? On my graph, we saw that blue line, which is the, hey, pull it out full retirement age, and you saw the other line, the gray line. You never catch up to it because you're below it. But But okay, but yeah, now we can, this is a good topic. Okay, so now we have that option where we can do age 70. Tell us what this is about. So you have basically, in my opinion, in my little guy, in my little mind, you've got age 62, full retirement age, or age 70.
Right.
Talk to us about age 70.
So every year you wait. So this is on the chart on the screen. You'll see it's assuming a full retirement age of 66. For me right now it's 67. But for every year you wait from your FRA until age 70, you get an 8% increase on the monthly benefit. And so we were laughing in the prep that for the last handful of years, people have said, well, gosh, the S&P's done 29%, 15%, 27%. 2019 to 21. I can just take the money out and invest it. And yeah, that's great. I didn't hear a lot of that last year as the capital markets got beat up a little bit, but you're still comparing apples and oranges, because this 8% increase you're going to get is on the monthly income check you'll receive the rest of your life, and that's essentially similar to the long-term averages of the S&P. Right. Plus or minus 8%. So, it's a nice bump in income that will live for the rest of your life. And one thing to note is there's a real important increase last year and this year in the cost of living adjustment. It's tied to inflation, right? Which you may have heard has been high the last, I don't know if you've heard, Brian, but it's been
up there.
Yeah. I figured. So, but the nice thing is that your increase in income is tied to that. And so if you wait until age 70, for example, you get anywhere from a 24 to 32% bump in the income you'll get for the rest of your life. That number will be ginned up by the inflation amount, the cost of living adjustment as well, for the rest of your life. So it can keep grinding higher at a bigger number. So it's got a positive compounding effect for you. If you
let me share my screen here on this. So because I got it working, and again, going back and forth with this. Now this is going full retirement age up to, or the blue line, which is age 70. Now you're talking about another $258,000 more. And this is assuming the age 90. Okay. And we can run these, the nice thing about this, if you go, listen, nobody in my family's lived past the age of 75, we can adjust this to 75 and redo the numbers. So that's what's nice about this software. And again, these are all guesstimates. These aren't exact. That's for our friends over at compliance. We can't say, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen, but we can at least get an estimate to say, on average, if you don't have long livers in your family, at age 70, you may not want to wait. You may want to pull it early. Or hey, depending. I mean, everybody's situation is different, but I think this just gives you an idea of, because you get that step up the entire way along, it's a great thing to notice how much does it really affect you long term. And so where in my father's family, he doesn't have long livers. My grandfather died I believe at age 68 or 65. My dad just turned 60. He'll be 64 this year, or 65 this year. And I've got young parents. And so he'll be like the oldest person in his family in like 3 generations. I mean, it's crazy. And so for him, he's like, I'm pulling my Social Security out as soon as I can. Now on my mom's side of the family, we're all a bunch of long livers, like 90s, 95. My kids got the genetic lottery because my wife's side of the family also the same. Her grandmother at 97 is still alive. So long livers. And so for us, my wife and I, now granted, this is assuming we actually even get Social Security. And we'll talk about that next. But one of the things we're looking at is, when do we pull it out? I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. Granted, I'm only 46. I got plenty of time to think about this, but we're starting to have those conversations of, how does that look? Is this something we do early? Is this something we do late? And hopefully the reason why we're already having that conversation, even at the age of 46, is because then when my clients are talking to us and saying, Brian, I don't know what to do, then we can have a conversation of saying, this is the process that I went through. to make the right decision.
Right.
So,
And I think
I think that's always the important part.
there's a
So,
couple of considerations we should probably dive into just to, as people are listening, so they can get their ideas around what's important to them. And I'll share my screen for one more moment just to I think it's helpful, because the nice thing about Social Security is it's somewhat tax-free. So as you can see on the screen here, it can be confusing at the onset, but the takeaway is for federal taxes, the pessimist wrote this slide because as an optimist, I like to think of what's tax-free.
yeah.
You can see if most of us will fall into provisional income over 34,000 single or 44,000 joint. And that mean, 85% federally taxed. So mercifully, it means 15% federally tax-free. For me, I know most of my money's in IRAs and 401ks that are traditional in nature, not so much in Roth. If I take a withdrawal out of that, it's going to be fully federally taxable and state income taxable. And Brian, we were talking in prep that the nice thing is, 13 states levy state income taxes on Social Security. I live in California. We are not, as of 2023, one of the 13 states. I'll read down the list real quick.
That's really quick, because that's interesting. Because again, you and I were talking about this yesterday. Again, not to jump on Ryder. It just surprised me with a state that loves to tax its citizens. They don't tax Social Security. I found that very interesting. It was just fascinating. So, yeah. Looks like we might have lost Ian here for a second, so hopefully he can jump back on. There we go. There's Ian. Okay, he's back. So, but. No, I was just saying, I don't know if you heard me, but it's fascinating that a state like California, who loves to tax its citizens, doesn't tax Social Security, which I found very interesting, which, is good. And I think that's also important when a lot of people are going, okay, I'm ready to retire and I'm going to leave California and I'm going to go to Tennessee, Kentucky, Nebraska, whatever. This is something you got to think about. So yeah, read the list really quick. I mean, what are those 13 states?
Yeah, so it's 13 states that levy state income taxes on it. So Colorado, Connecticut, which is actually where I grew up, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, and West Virginia are the 13 have state income taxes. Obviously, there's states like Florida that don't have any state income tax, so it wouldn't be a consideration. But there's a lot of states like ours that are, high income tax in California and do not levy state income taxes. So you don't have to move to Nevada to avoid it.
And I know we're getting onto a little bit of a tangent here, but this is something to think about as you're doing your planning and you're doing your retirement and doing these things. It's important to know, hey, do these states offer, are they going to tax my Social Security? Because that can be very important. I know when I look and helping people do their estate planning and retirement planning, state of California, they follow the federal guidelines. You have to have over $11.5 million before you're going to have any sort of estate tax. I also have a bunch of clients in Oregon. Oregon, they have their own estate tax. So if you're up over $2 million in the state of Oregon, you're going to pay some sort of state estate tax. And it's interesting how I think a lot of times as we're doing our planning and doing our Social Security planning or our long-term care planning or whatever it is we're doing, we overlook the importance of each state and the rules of each state. And so, it's something to very much consider as we're going on here. So, hey, I think we have about 15 minutes left in this. So, what are some other things? I know I had some questions on, one thing I've noticed. I don't get an online I don't get a paper statement anymore for Social Security. I used to get them all the time, and now I don't get them anymore. What is the deal with no paper statements?
Yeah, I'll show you just so everyone can see what it looks like. So on the left is your paper statement, and you used to get it every year up until 15 years ago now. And then they made it every 5 years for a little while, right? Because it just administratively it was cheaper, and as you mentioned, Social Security is had a bit of a budget pinch, but there's a handful of reasons why you'd really want to sign up on ssa.gov/myaccount, which is what you see on the right hand side of the screen, the website. So if you do that, you will no longer, if you sign up online, you'll no longer get a physical statement in the mail, but you'll always have access to it online. And for those of you listening over the age of 62, if you have not yet signed up at ssa.gov/my account, I would implore that you finish the webinar today and then sign up right away. And here's why. Equifax was hacked probably 6 years ago now. And 60% of American adults, they're a credit rating agency. 60% of American adults had their sensitive information leaked to the dark web. What we've seen as a result of that is a rash of Social Security fraud. So if you don't sign up at ssa.gov, say you're waiting for your paper statement every 5 years now, and you're over 62, if you haven't signed up, someone else, if they have your information, could sign up for you. And they're doing that. And they're signing up at 62 or earlier. They may be getting a reduced amount, Brian, but they don't care because they're getting, these thieves are getting money. And so if you sign up at ssa.gov/my account, they can't at least spoof your identity, and you'll get the valuable information that you can use in your software program, Brian, to help people make a more informed decision.
Question: if you happen to be one of the unlucky souls who goes on here and finds out they've been hacked, what do you recommend? Just go straight down to your Social Security office, talk to them in person. Do you bring those documents?
Exactly. It's funny. It came up with an advisor I work with. It was 63. It happened to him, and so.
Really?
He tried to log in and he couldn't. He's like, yeah, why can't I get in? So we went over it, and it's because someone else had already created a password using all of his information, basic credit check information, and they were collecting his Social Security. So if you can take action, and it's happened fairly recently, anecdotally, from what I understand, they've been good to reinstate it. No harm, no foul, once they prove it's fraud. But I would call them immediately. I think it's important to one takeaway you should all have is be your own best advocate. The other thing I would share with you is, as you go on to your Social Security account, look at the income history, because for much of Social Security's existence, it was a very manual process. They'd get a feed from the IRS, and they would input it manually into the Social Security database, and people would literally forget a zero. And so I say I made $50,000 this year, it might show $5,000. And if you don't catch that, they may not reconcile it. And if it's well in the past, they won't bother with it. If it's what I've heard in the last 6 years, if there's an error, they'll connect with the IRS and fix it. If it goes too far back, they're not going to bother with it. So be diligent on your own behalf to make sure everything looks right.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this video or watching this video, and you have questions on some of the Social Security stuff, because one of the things we didn't go into today, just because of time and technical difficulties, we should say, is we did not go into some of the bigger strategies, whether you've been divorced before or if you're a widow or a widower, and there's different strategies there of being able to do some things, and those laws have recently changed. So some of the strategies are a little better, some of them aren't as good as they used to be. So those are some things that if you think that you have kind of a special circumstance or something, let's chat, let's talk on the phone. We'll get Ian on the call, and we can go into those things in more specific terms and really dial in what would be the best for you. Because again, at the end of the day, investment planning, financial planning isn't about one little part of your life. It's looking at it from a bigger picture, and how does it all interweave together. And I think a lot of times people kind of separate some things, and it's not necessarily helps people when we do it that way. So I think these are timely discussions. So Ian, here at the end, what do you got to finish up with? I mean, comments, concerns, questions, stories, whatever.
Yeah, no, I think to your point, Brian, there's a lot of considerations, and they've changed. You used to be able to file for restricted spousal benefits and file against suspended benefits, and that's gone away by and large. But there's still opportunity if you've been married for a year or divorced and had been previously married for more than 10, for you to potentially create additional income. The takeaway would be, don't go to Social Security looking for advice. Come to us for advice. Go to Social Security to execute your wishes. Yeah. And we'll help you understand. They won't ask you, hey, Brian, were you married before and then got divorced? They're not going to ask you that, but you could be eligible for additional income, right? And so we'll ask you those questions and help you get a handle on that. So you go down there, either online or in person, to execute your wishes on this important income stream.
Well, and I think also by prepping beforehand, by talking to us, or your advisor, preferably us, but I think at that point, you're going into that Social Security meeting more prepared. And so you're going in there with, this is exactly what I want, this is how I want it, and you do it, and you're not wasting your time. Because as we all know, when dealing with a government agency, it can take forever. I mean, just a really quick anecdote. Yeah, my son's getting ready to do his driver's license, and so we had to call the DMV to reschedule his driver's test. I kid you not, my wife was on the phone for 3 hours because online they wouldn't let her cancel it, and so she had to call in. But then it was after 5 o'clock, so she had to wait a call for the next day, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, and so I think a lot of times what you need to do is let's prep you beforehand. So when you have to talk with these government agencies, it's quick. It's not wasting your time. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what my takeaway would be. Better to be prepared when going into it. So.
Yeah, I think if your clients go and get their information at ssa.gov/my account, they can share it with you. You can put it into that planning software you showed. It can really do a lot to prepare. And we could talk about the nuance of what else they should be considering around that. But I think that is a great thing. I've had people take something like that and bring it with them to the appointment to say, I want this. Please do that. Even if you have to get a supervisor, please do.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end here. It's hard to believe we've almost been an hour. So, Ian, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Again, just to kind of finish up here, we try to do these webinars every month. We took a little hiatus over the holidays. I am going to bring Ian back on maybe talking about some international stuff or talking about Medicare. Again, Ian's been a great partner. I mean, and Ian, we've known each other, probably 10 years now. And so Ian's a great guy and he loves talking to my clients. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have these questions and things. I thank you so much for your time. Spending an hour on YouTube I know I get lost in it, but I want to make sure these videos are exciting, that they're informative, and that if anything, you can at least have a drinking game with how uncouth I am, I guess, with the interview process that I am still learning. And so, again, I do thank you for your time. I hope this was beneficial, and we've got some really good ones. And our next one, which I'm hoping that we're going to be able to finalize, is I just have to get the individual out the questions, but we're going to actually have a pro baseball player on for our next video. And so it's going to have nothing to do with investments, have nothing to do with the market, except for the fact that he is going to share some stories of when he got his first contract. Things come out of the woodwork, when you start making some money, and he's going to share some stories. I'm not going to go into too much who it is, but let's just say that this individual has pitched in a World Series. Those that live in the Bay Area will definitely know who he is. And so I'm very excited, get to count him as a friend. And I asked him the other day, I said, hey, and Ian, you'll appreciate this. I was on the phone with him the other day and I said, hey, I'm doing these webinars. I'm doing one on Friday. And I go, you should check me out on YouTube. I said, they're great because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And he just started laughing. He's like, yeah, I do this podcast and it's hard to organize it and stuff. I said, well, hey, would you be on my webinar? And he goes, yeah, sure, why not? And so, it was good. And so I'm going to give him a list of the questions, but he's agreed to be on it. And so I think that one's actually going to be in April. So we're going to kind of have this one for March, and then in April we're going to have that one come out. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to get a celebrity on here, so to do some interviews. But it should be a lot of fun.
Maybe I'll have you on his podcast one day too. Who knows?
Maybe he's a good guy. So, but be looking out for that one. And again, if you're one of my clients or even someone who's interested in services, please let me know what I can do to help. And in the meantime, hang in there, and appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful day.
That's right.